Good day, it's August 7th, 2023. Donald Trump campaign may be facing financial peril for the 2024 election. According to a report from the Politico magazine, Donald Trump's combined fundraising from his official campaign committee and two affiliated political action committees, the Save America PAC and the MAGA, Inc., collected a total of $53.8 million in the first 6 months of 2023. I'm Esmeralda Padilla Gold, and welcome to The Pulse. Later in the show, Uncle Sam will be joining us remotely from abroad, where he is on a special assignment in Asia. These fundraising numbers were expected to surpass his competitors for the presidential nomination. However, federal campaign filing for the 2 quarters of 2023 show that they have spent more than $57 million, meaning they spent more than they fundraised and appear to owe money after spending what they collected from donors. According to Politico, the Joint Fundraising Committee spent over $17 million in the first 6 months of 2023 on fundraising expenses such as digital consulting, direct mail, email, and list rentals. The Save America PAC, which filed its report separately in federal filing, spent $24.4 million in expenses, with a significant portion, $21 million, going towards legal consulting. There were at least 50 entities, likely lawyers and law firms, paid by the campaign on behalf of Trump to handle the many legal problems he faced. On the other hand, his opponent Chris Christie, the former governor of New Jersey, collected nearly $6 million. Chris Christie, who launched his bid only in June, raised $5.9 million, some of which came from high-profile donors like real estate mogul Harlan Crow, who was involved in a gift scandal with Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. Other donors to Chris Christie included Murray Kushner, an uncle to Jared Kushner, who is Trump's son-in-law, entertainment mogul Barry Diller, and Carolina Panthers owner David Tepper.
Hi Abby, I'm glad I could connect to our signal in time for the show. The biggest story that all media outlet has been waiting for, more than a week after a target letter was sent to Donald Trump, finally happened this week. The federal criminal indictment of Donald J. Trump. Special counsel Jack Smith filed a 45-page indictment against Donald Trump for 4 criminal conspiracy relating to efforts to overturn the election and the events leading to January 6, 2021. In a copy of the indictment obtained by the Pulse, Donald Trump is indicted for 4 criminal conspiracy. Here's Special Counsel Jack Smith announcing the criminal indictment.
Good evening. Today, an indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump with conspiring to defraud the United States, conspiring to disenfranchise voters, and conspiring and attempting to obstruct an official proceeding. The indictment was issued by a grand jury of citizens here in the District of Columbia, and it sets forth the crimes charged in detail. I encourage everyone to read it in full. The attack on our nation's capital on January 6, 2021, was an unprecedented assault on the seat of American democracy. As described in the indictment, it was fueled by lies. Lies by the defendant targeted at obstructing a bedrock function of the U.S. government, the nation's process of collecting, counting, and certifying the results of the presidential election. The men and women of law enforcement who defended the U.S. Capitol on January 6th are heroes. They are patriots, and they are the very best of us. They did not just defend a building or the people sheltering in it. They put their lives on the line to defend who we are as a country and as a people. They defended the very institutions and principles that define the United States.
According to lawyer Michael Popak of the blogcast Legal AF, Special Counsel Jack Smith really built a solid case over a period of almost 2 years to come up with a case that can stand on its own merit. Here are some of the analysis from Midas Touch Network.
This is Michael Popak, Legal AF. Jack Smith has broken the code on how to prove that Donald Trump had the required criminal intent, criminal mind to commit the crimes. It keeps prosecutors up at night, making sure they have enough evidence arrayed against the defendant to prove that key element, without which you do not have a criminal prosecution. And that is what every criminal defendant usually tries to attack and tried to argue that he doesn't have a criminal mind. He did it with an innocent head or an innocent heart. And that is Donald Trump's theme. He's going to try to push it off and say he relied on lawyers. Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, John Eastman. He did it when up in New York, when he said he relied on Michael Cohen related to Stormy Daniels. And they're already floating the I relied on the lawyers bit, instead of that the lawyers were doing the bidding for the client, which is Donald Trump, which is exactly the way the indictment was written.
And by Thursday last week, Donald Trump appeared before the federal court in Washington, D.C. for the arraignment. And in what would be his third criminal indictment as a private citizen, Trump. The total count now of his criminal indictment in the New York State criminal case, the Mar-a-Lago document federal case, and the 4 felony cases in Washington, D.C. brings to a total of 72 criminal allegations. He is charged with now in 3 different courts in Florida, in New York, and now in Washington, D.C.
Steve Wynn, the former chairman and CEO of Wynn Resorts Limited, has concluded his gaming career here in Nevada. According to an article in the Las Vegas Review-Journal, the 81-year-old Wynn will no longer be involved in gaming in the state of Nevada, as he has agreed to pay a $10 million fine for actions that brought embarrassment to Nevada's casino industry. This settlement was approved by the Nevada Gaming Commission in a unanimous 4-0 vote late last month. The approved settlement marks the end of a 3.5-year dispute between Wynn and the Nevada Gaming Control Board. The board had directed the state attorney general's office in October 2019 to issue a complaint regarding sexual harassment allegations made by women employed at the 18-year-old resort. Wynn has consistently denied any harassment allegations. The $10 million fine, the largest ever assessed against an individual licensee, must be paid within 3 business days. Additionally, Wynn's former company and executives have already paid over $55 million in fines to regulatory bodies in Nevada and Massachusetts, relating to the harassment allegations and the company's failure to address them. Although Wynn now resides in Florida and did not attend the commission's meeting in Carson City, 2 of his attorneys were present at the hearing but did not address the commission. As part of the settlement terms, Wynn did not admit to any wrongdoing and agreed to be entirely removed from any direct or indirect affiliation, financing, consultation, promotional advertising, or licensing agreements in Nevada's gaming industry. He is only allowed to own up to 5% ownership in other companies within Nevada. The sexual harassment complaint was filed by the Gaming Control Board 1 year after Wynn resigned from his executive roles with Wynn Resorts, divested his financial interests in the company, and moved out of a villa he resided in at the resort in 2018. In January 2018, when the allegations were reported in several media outlets, including the Wall Street Journal, Steve Wynn also resigned as finance chairman of the Republican National Committee. A year later, in February 2019, the Gaming Commission fined Wynn Resorts $20 million, the highest ever imposed on a company in Nevada, for failing to respond to harassment complaints raised by several women. During the licensing hearing for Wynn Resorts Anchor Boston, the company was fined $35 million and eventually granted a license to operate in Boston, Massachusetts. We will now take a commercial break. When we return, Maria Nieto Orta of the Young Democrats of Nevada will join us in the studio. Please stay with us.
Pure Medical Equipment provides top-notch quality medical supply equipment. Whether to rent or buy, Pure Medical Equipment and Supplies has it all.
Pure Medical Equipment is committed to serve and give back to Southern Nevada.
We deliver medical supplies and rentals to your door.
Today on The Pulse, we are honored and privileged to have Maria Nieto Orta, the chair for the Hispanic and Latino Caucus. Ms. Orta's commitment to empowering the Latino community and in promoting civic engagement is truly inspiring. And we look forward to gaining valuable insights from her on this important topic. Welcome to The Pulse, Maria.
Thank you so much, Esmeralda, for having me. I'm super excited to be here, first of course, on the polls, but then second of all, to obviously talk about the Hispanic and Latino Caucus and what Young Dems of Nevada does as a whole.
Maria, on behalf of Uncle Sam, myself, and the entire crew of The Pulse, we extend our sincere gratitude for joining us today and sharing your valuable time and expertise. Your unwavering dedication to empowering the Latino community through civic engagement is truly commendable, and we are genuinely eager to learn from your insights and experiences. We look forward to a meaningful and enlightening discussion. Now, without further ado, let's dive into the first question. Could you please provide us with some insights about your organization?
Yes, of course. So the Young Democrats of Nevada really focuses on engaging year-round Young Democrats of Nevada, right? We are a sub of the Young Democrats of America. A lot of our work really has done in the past 2 years really has been to continue growing Young Democrats. One of the biggest things that I have been focused on as chair of the Hispanic and Latino Caucus has been to grow the caucus itself. In the last year, we were the fastest growing caucus, which honestly, super proud of it. And I was also the first elected chair. Right, and I think that is something, thank you. And I think that's something that's really great, you know, like as someone that's young, a Latina, a woman of color, to be elected, to be part of the caucus was really huge for me. And I'm undocumented, I have DACA. So as someone that can't participate by voting, civic engagement to me is really important, right? Because at the end of the day, like, the knowledge that I learn is reflected onto my family. The knowledge that they know is reflected onto their friends. And that's really the way that I carry the Hispanic and Latino Caucus, is just ensuring that regardless of legal status or anything like that, like, people are still involved, still uplifting folks. And of course, when election comes, that eligible voters are the ones that are coming out and voting for candidates that really truly stand for us and for our community.
Wow, that's admirable of you. In spite of your status, you choose to give your voice for the majority of people who can't, right?
Yeah, it's really insightful, right? Because growing up, I was taught that, like, you can't participate in politics, like, don't even think about it.
Yes.
And really being able to find that space where I'm welcomed all the time and I'm able to continue uplifting more folks that feel like they're not able to speak out and engage them in a safe and welcoming space, I think really has been like the moments I've been most proud of. And I think that is like one thing that I will continue to do, is just to make sure that people with no legal status still feel like they can voice their concerns regardless of anything, and just ensuring that those stories are also shared.
Yes, and lending your voice is the most powerful thing you can do. Well, has there been an increase in registered Democrats among youth and other young voters in Nevada during the 2022 midterms? If possible, could you provide us with an estimate?
Yeah, so young voters provided approximately 3 times the margin of victory between in the Nevada Senate race between Catherine Cortez Masto and Adam Laxalt, right? And that's really huge here, where we only have 2 statewide senators, and we already have another important election coming up in 2024, where Senator Jackie Rosen is up. So it's about continuously to engage the folks, right? And sometimes I think people are scared to call themselves like either Democrats or Republicans, and they register nonpartisan, and those are the people that we're trying to reach out as well, just to ensure, like, hey, like, do you know what the Democratic Party stands for? And like, let me help you like re-register as a Democrat if that's what you wish. So that's the work that we've been doing. But like I said, I know like in the Nevada state Senate race, like young voters did provide the margin of victory.
Amazing. How has the voter turnout been for young Latino and Hispanic, white, Black, AAPI, Native Americans, and other minorities in recent elections?
So I think something really huge to highlight is that along with millennials, Gen Zers turned out in historically high numbers for this midterm, for the 2022 midterm election, second only to 2018, right? And I think we're definitely seeing such an increase every single midterm, and I think a lot of it has to do with the educational piece that is being provided. After the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a lot of work to get folks, or to get people, young people, to register online, to do their change of address online, to know that the mail-in ballots in Nevada are safe and secure, that they're able to turn that in. I think something that we're really like putting in perspective now is that a lot of people that are voting in these elections are working class folks, right? Like they have 2 to 3 jobs, they have 12-hour shifts, like sometimes they can't stand in polls, and a lot of that education really has gone into helping young voters turn out and knowing that like, hey, like it's okay to ask your boss for a couple of hours to go vote, right? And I think that young people, Gen Zers, are really in that generation where they're not so afraid to ask so many questions, where they're not so afraid to be like, hey, I'm gonna be in a little late because I have to go vote. Like, and I think we're seeing that a lot, and the importance of how even midterm elections matter, right? And I think sometimes people think, oh, well, only the presidential election matters, and no, it's every single election, every single like seat in Nevada matters. And we saw it being reflected this year with a supermajority assembly, Democratic assembly, with a majority Senate, Democratic Senate. So again, like we just continue to win seats, and it really has been due to young voters turning out year after year.
That's good that we put it on our priority list as well. What is the general sentiment of young voters towards the Republican attacks on women's rights, LGBTQ rights, and attacks on race and minorities, as observed in Florida and many red states?
So I think a lot of what we're noticing is there's these attacks, right? Like these very, very, very far right attacks. And people really kind of like just kind of look at them and they're like, this doesn't make sense though. Like this isn't my experience, right? And I think a lot of it has to do with the leadership that we have, not just state, but also nationally. What was happening in Florida with students being taught that Black people, African Americans, actually benefited from slavery, and the governor invited the vice president to talk to him about it, and she declined because she's like, I'm not gonna feed onto this like fake news, right? And I think like, again, this generation of young voters really is not afraid to ask questions, really not afraid to stand up for themselves. I think we've been seeing a lot of resources go out for like abortion, for LGBTQ plus groups, because we've really noticed that at the end of the day, like the people that have each other is your community. The people that really do have your back are elected officials that care about your community and are not just there during election time, right? And I think a lot of Democrats that are being elected, that have been elected in the state of Nevada, show that year after year, that they really are here volunteering on their time off, talking about mental health, talking about LGBTQ plus issues, talking about safe contraception, talking about like making sure that we can continue having abortions in Nevada. And I think that that is really great.
What is the position of millennials and Generation Z voters regarding affordable housing, healthcare, and infrastructure?
I think, I mean, people care about it, right? I think we are in an economy where it's so difficult to get a house. It's so difficult to be able to afford rent. It's like rent is going up, but somehow like minimum wage is still staying the same, right? And I was lucky enough that last year I was able to purchase my first home.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But it definitely came with like having to fight so many people for like a good home, right? And it was like having to be denied so many times because I wasn't making enough money or because I wasn't able to offer cash. And it's like, I'm a young woman of color, like I do not have $400,000 just laying around, right? And I think that is like the biggest thing. Like we're really focusing on generational wealth and like being able to buy houses for ourselves that will later provide for our families. And I know one of my biggest things was in being able to buy my own house, I no longer had to worry about my rent going up, right? And it's like rent is going up, bills are going up again. And I think it's just coming to a point where it's just so hard to continue finding a place, not just for yourself. Like there's times where because rent is so high, like 2-3 families are living in the same house, right? And it like creates this cluster, and then young kids can't focus on their homework because they're having like so many people in the same rooms as them. So I think young people do care about affordable housing. I think that is like one of the biggest misconceptions is that we're not worried about affordable housing, but we are. Like we're so worried about ensuring that we find something.
How successful have the Young Democrats been in educating youth and other young people on the democratic process and other social and societal issues?
I would like to say we've been very successful. The Young Democrats of Nevada hosted the biannual convention of Young Democrats of America, and we saw a little more than 700 people attend our conference, right, over 3 days. And it's a conference where like we are sitting down and like we're listening to panelists, we're learning more, but we're also convening with each other and we're getting to know Democrats from other states. And I know a lot of like what I was personally hearing like on my end was just like how much Young Democrats of Nevada has grown. I think in the last 16 months, we grew almost 4 times in members, right? We started so many different caucuses. We now have the LGBTQ plus caucus, we have the Black caucus, we have the Labor caucus, we have the Hispanic and Latino caucus that just started last year too. And I think that that's, again, a reflection of how committed we are to the work and how committed we are to continue to engage people. I think one of the biggest things that we put into practice is like, sometimes like people don't want to sit through panels. They don't want to like just like talk. They don't want to just like feel talked at, right? Like they want to talk to other people. They want to get to know each other. And in that, like ideologies and opinions are shared in the room, and like people hear about like which candidate is running for what office and which candidate like is helping our community and versus which candidate is attacking our community.
Do you anticipate an increase in young and new voters registering as Democrats in the upcoming elections?
I hope so. I truly do hope so. I think, again, like it would be a reflection of our work, right? And it's like ensuring that people feel comfortable registering as a Democrat and that people feel educated enough to register as a Democrat. I think a lot of it really comes into like teaching them and educating folks on like, this is Young Democrats, like our beliefs, right? And this is why we're supporting these candidates, or this is why like we believe that these folks like know what to do. And I think as we move forward, like that's going to be the biggest piece, is going to be educating, right? And it's going to be like, especially in the state Senate race, like educating how State Senator Jackie Rosen like is fighting for our communities.
Thank you for being here with us, Maria, and we are excited to hear your thoughts on these crucial topics. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. I think really just to wrap up this conversation, like it's important that people register to vote, right? It's important that eligible voters vote. But it is also important for folks like myself that are not able to vote to continue engaging in politics, to continue engaging in civic engagement and community service. I think, again, like I said at the beginning, the knowledge that we take home is being repeated. It's being repeated by our parents. It's being repeated by our grandparents, by our siblings. And one of the biggest things that one of my favorite memories that I always remember is that my sister once told me, she was like, this person is telling me, and this was back in 2018, this person is telling me that I should not get involved in politics. And at that time I was involved already in politics as well. And she was like, but I see you so involved, like why should I get involved? And I never really thought to like have to explain to my sister like why, right? But I think in that moment it was a moment of reflection and a moment of being like, there's people telling them at all times not to get involved. Like, we just have to continue reminding them how important it is to get involved.
You know, you're 24, and I could tell that you are very passionate about being involved in your community. But what was the catalyst that made you want to say, this is my God's calling?
I think for me was when Trump got elected into office, and there was a lot of attacks towards the Latino community, but there was a lot of attacks specifically towards undocumented immigrants. I was afraid. I was so afraid to get into politics. I was afraid to say that I'm undocumented. I was afraid to speak Spanish, like to my mom at grocery stores. Like I was afraid for my parents not knowing like what would happen to them if they spoke Spanish, because they have a thicker accent than I do, right? And I was like, okay, like enough is enough. Like, how can I get involved? And I was hired to work for the Nevada State Democratic Party in 2018. And ever since then, like I've just done a lot of work. I think the first time that I was open about my legal status was at a Get Out to Vote rally with Senator Jackie Rosen and former Governor Steve Sisolak, and now Vice President Kamala Harris was also there, right? And it was like so inspiring to see so many people want me to get involved, like, and I'm not saying like just me, but like people that look like me, people that are like me, right? And I was like, okay, like it all starts somewhere. And I think like if I get involved, I know I can get so many other people involved as well.
Well, I admire your courage, and may you enrich the lives of more people with what you do.
Thank you so much.
Maria, we sincerely appreciate your time and expertise today. Your passion for empowering the Latino community through civic engagement is truly inspiring. Thank you for sharing your valuable insights with us on The Pulse. We hope to have you back in the future to continue our discussions. Best of luck with all of your endeavors, and we look forward to seeing the continued impact you have in the community. Take care and God bless.
Thank you so much. Hope to be back.
Thank you for tuning in to The Pulse today. We'll be back next week with more updates and discussions. See you then. I'm Esmeralda Padilla Gold.
And I'm Sam Buban, who joined you from Asia. Until next time, God bless your week.